least for the beginning. And I use the rock mask. I convert the height field to a mesh because before this point it isn't a mesh, it's just a plane with the height field projected on it. And I delete everything else besides the rocks. I only leave those. Then you have this planar thing with no depth. So I extrude it. I subdivide it to get a little more natural edges than the ones before. And then I give some variants into it, detail. And this last step was for the layers. So I cut it in irregular heights. So you get those the variants in the height of the stone layers. And the color, and extrude each layer a little differently so that you get a little more deepness into the layers and shadows between them. And the color I later use in Unity. So this is the vertex color of the mesh, which I can use in the Unity, in the shader, to give the rocks different textures or just color variations. I right now just stick with color variations, but you can use it for whatever you want. And the last big block is building the tracks, the train tracks itself. And for that, I will jump into Houdini to show you a little bit how you work with that. So in the viewport, you see already the result. But I told you you need only one line to build all of this. And that's true. So this is the demo input I have, which later, if you use it from Unity or start the process by Unity, it will be the Unity curve. And then you go through several steps. This network actually just looks small. Behind each red blob, there, or pale red blob, there's more nodes. So the first thing would be to take this line and push it to the left. And every time you make a split here, you basically keep the input from above. So I can just take the line again and push it to the right. And then this one is a merge node. So I can just merge it together afterwards. And I have both lines. So I doubled the points and have two separated lines where I can continue to build my tracks from. And then the other nodes are just metadata, adding data to the lines or to the points. Then for building the rails, I split this into three steps: only the rails itself, the sleepers, and some more geometry where I can place gravel and give it some depth. And the first thing is to split the lines into two separate ones where I can then make sweep the rails across. And this is a really cool operator because it just takes something, some geometry, some input, and sweeps it across a line. I think maybe you know this from other 3D modeling softwares. In this case, it's just a line. So I take 2 points and sweep them across this line. So I get, again, 2 lines out of it. I could have also pushed it by their normals into the other directions like I did before, but just another method of doing it. There's always several methods of doing the same thing. And then this is a pretty cheap trick to get a train track profile. I just used again the sweep function and drew a profile of a train track with some points, with a curve. It's not modeled. There's no 3D in there. It's not even symmetrical, but it was enough. If we get to the point that I need a more detailed mesh, I can still exchange it and Houdini will just place it in there for me. So for the moment, that's good enough. And that's basically how you work again for the sleepers. I didn't push the double lines in it. It's only the single line. So I take a box, just a box, scale it so that it looks like a piece of wood. And then another function is copy 2 points. So it takes this line and the individual points, which I can display here. So this line, and copies the geometry I put in to each of those points. And this is how I get the sleepers. And basically the same for the ballast, the gravel geometry. I just take a box or a grid this time and sweep it along the lines I built. And the power of this is that, oops, I forget to merge it again, that I can have parameters on there, which I can also expose to Unity. And in Unity or in here, I can just say, make the gravel geometry higher, and the rails and the sleepers will adjust to it. But of course, only if I build it that way that it is will adjust itself. Or if the line changes, it will just adjust itself to the line. And it's basically the same process for the bridges. I only a little more work. I extract the path I need. I get those 2 lines here for the outer geometry, or even for the posts. I get those 2 lines, right? And then I connect it from top to bottom so that I get these lines already, and the second line on the bottom, or the points at the bottom, come from a raycast against the terrain. So all those points get raycasted down to the terrain, and I add points there. Then I connect them, and because it's basically just temporary, I want to build nicer bridges later, but for now it's good enough again. I just say polywire, which does makes a tube around points, and this gives me this geometry. And that's it for the support construction. For the flat part of the bridge itself, I just again prepare me a line and sweep a grid along it. Then I get this street across the bridge, and again the same for this borders at the ends of the bridge, or to frame the bridge. It's again the same technique as with the rails. I just had a curve, the profile of this thing, and swept it across the line, and that's it for the bridge. And because I set it up this way, everywhere where the path of the train track will be above the ground, everywhere there will be a bridge. And yeah, it goes on like this. I can go deeper if you have questions, but the power of this, I cannot stress it enough, is that it's procedural and that you can always change the inputs you are exposing. And for example, for those power lines, I can just say, just give me them every 60 meters instead of every 20, and it will just do it. I can even, for those, I didn't know how high they were. So if we talk to the train drivers and they say they are not 7 meters, they are 10 meters, then we just do it. Of course, now it looks a little stupid, so I can also make those cable holders higher and push them upwards, and the power cable itself just follows them. So it's the real beauty of it. I hope you can see it because it's a little small. So, and then before you can ask questions, let me show you how this is generated in Unity itself. I prepared a small asset or demo thing. This is basically the link to Houdini, or to an invisible Houdini instance running in the background. And those are all the parameters I exposed from my network. So basically, I have this path, a smaller one, which I will now generate because it takes up quite some time if I take the big one. So let me switch that. And I'm just on a small razor blade staff with an external GPU, so bear with me. And then I can say generate the rails if it wants to work. Right, the large ones disappear. And then that's a little fuzzy. You sometimes don't see what Houdini is doing, or what if Houdini is working in the background, but you see it if you check what your CPU is doing. And it should go to 100% pretty soon. Already 40. There are always some background tasks which don't show up quite nicely, but this process is already preparing something. The other one is Houdini itself. Oh, it's already there. It was so quick. So now for the small test path, I made it go beneath the terrain. So here's the tunnel entrance. I generated it now without the holes map, so we have to go through it. So it goes beneath the terrain, has this tunnel in there, then goes up, builds that's actually not high enough. But if I ran the whole process, it would have lifted the terrain to it. But if I go high enough, it builds a bridge under it. But I think this is some older cached path it pulled. That sometimes happens. You have sometimes to delete the cache and go through the whole process, but this would take too long now. Sorry for that. I don't know if I should go on. I can go for hours.
Yeah. First of all, thanks for the impressive demonstration of this workflow. Yeah, I see
Sure.
clapping hands in the video. Please ask your questions. There haven't been any in the chat so far, as far as I saw.
Stomped, I guess, by the flood of information.
Yeah.
I have one question. You use a lot of nodes. Do you have any? Do you need any programming for the nodes, or they're all more or less template nodes you can use out of Houdini, or did you alter one of them, like adapt them for your needs?
Yeah, the majority of them are really built-in nodes. Sometimes you just get faster what you need if you script it a little, but the most probably most of them are built in. But I have some which are a little bigger, for example, for jump to it, for setting up all those colors I later use in the shader again for the buildings. And then you can do something like those. So those are already bigger scripts for my case.
Okay. Cool.
And it just iterates over faces in this case. And it calculates how many doors I went to place on the building, because I also had to place doors in there. And if I make this more prominent, you can already also see it. So I set the vertex color or I iterate through the quads here, and I on one random quad, or I think if there's more than 4 quads, I give it more options to place doors, and then it just CD is the color. It sets the vertex color of this quad to something I want. Stuff like this is sometimes quicker in code, but also maybe just because I don't know the right node. Might be as well. So I had, in the beginning, I had Python scripts where I ran over all the vertices in the line and delete those parts which I didn't need, for example, for the bridges. And just yesterday, I found out that you can do it with 2 nodes. So there's always so many ways to do all those things. It's a deep learning experience.
I guess so. I mean, we have Houdini in-house, but it's reserved for 3D.
Yeah, you can do a lot of things with it.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. So I'm sorry I missed the beginning part. I had to hop on a work call, but I might have missed that. But this is a massive scene. I wonder, isn't this too expensive when you build it for, let's say, VR? VR experience?
It runs in VR.
Really? Wow.
Yes, we will later have a stronger machine, but I am on a Razer Blade Stealth, so Ultrabook i7, and I have a eGPU 2070 GeForce, and it runs in VR like that. So, I mean, all the trees you see in the back are billboards. They only become geometry if you get near enough. The houses, if there's no door in the wall, then this each level is 1 polygon. So it's also why it looks so shitty, but it also makes it run in VR like that right now.
So thank you, Paulina, for the question, because I have had the same or similar question. Like, you don't use any occlusion meshes from Unity, within Unity.
Right now, only the mountains occlude. I think the biggest thing to draw is the trees, and the mountains will occlude a big part of the trees all the time.
Yeah.
For the city, I think it's just not necessary. It's right now only one mesh, even. I think I split the streets and the houses, but I don't think it's worth occluding it house by house. Later, maybe if you don't see it at all, of course, it gets culled.
I mean, this is normal, the cheap trick. If you have some low-level camera passing over the ground to make an occlusion map so that you blend out most of the geometry, because the front houses always block everything. So
yes. But yeah, houses will only be in the background because you're leaving the city pretty fast, and then you will only see it from distance.
Yeah, understood.
From time to time.
You said
No.
in the beginning that you tile the whole terrain too in some chunks. So do you make there some magic, like few frustum kind of stuff, everything which is behind the camera you don't see, so you throw it away for rendering, or do you really throw everything at the GPU and let it do its work?
I will use a few frustum culling on terrain, works by default, so you don't have to do anything there. And also the trees are real terrain trees, so they get culled too if the terrain under it gets culled. I will use the in Unity occlusion culling thing where it makes those boxes and culls only what the camera or or culls everything that is blocked from the view of the camera, and I hope the mountains do their thing. But for the terrace, I don't do any magic. No, I just use the built-in stuff. So, but this, I have 4 pieces right now, and the strength of tiling it is also that it can be parallelized, and it also can be distributed to more machines, and then not maybe 2 machines would calculate each terrain piece in parallel and stuff, but that's not yet for me.
Cool. Armin, you had a question?
Oh yeah. Recently in the chat, I just wanted to know what is the current vertex count of the city?
Should be in the 100,000s or something. So the buildings. So the buildings, it's 160,000. Yeah, and the streets won't be much. 80,000. So roughly 250,000.
Okay, but it's rendered with 2 batches actually.
It is 1 material. No, I lied. It's 2 materials. So it there's this thing about the max vertex per batches. I think it's still 46,000.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. Depends on the import setting.
If the mesh, okay. Yeah, but it should be something like that. So I used all those vertex colors to split the different houses. I can still show you the vertex color. So different color means different texture from this wall albedo map.
Ah, okay.
And do some UV tricks to push the buildings in there.
This is actually the map index in the encoded in the colors. Okay, cool.
Yes, right.
Okay,
and
thanks.
also where a door will be. So in Houdini, I calculated which face of the wall or which side of the building would be closest to the street, and only there I place doors, because only there it makes sense. Of course, you can go into so many details. You can build streets or let it generate streets to the houses and whatever, garage but I think it's not needed for my case. Also, if it's a peak roof or a flat roof, I calculate the size of the footprint, and if it's above 300 square meters, it gets a flat roof to add some variation, and below it gets a peak roof.
Thanks, very cool. It's very cool.
And streets are pretty cool. I did today, or the texturing basically. Also calculated the correct UVs for the crossings and stuff. That's actually a very, very powerful module in Houdini, that you can pull in OpenStreetMap data, and there's nodes for it to process it directly. So this is directly from OpenStreetMap. And you get the footprint of everything, rivers and stuff. And you asked for code. This is built into Houdini, but you can jump into basically everything. And this is the in Python, the parser for the OpenStreetMap data. This is not by me, this is built in.
Cool.
And then you can filter this data already. Oops, yeah, this is the node for the filter. For only the footprints of the houses, different road types, what's saved inside OpenStreetMap. And then, yeah, if you need more types, you can extend this thing. And then, again, just extruding stuff, moving vertices, building the UVs, and yes, because it's procedural, I started, for example, with the streets or with the crossings. I started with a 4-way crossing and then the three-way crossing looked shitty, and then I fixed this, and then basically it all comes together at some point. I have this one circular thing. I'm really afraid of this one. Maybe I will just pull it together and make one crossing out of it. But this all works very nice.
More questions, anybody? If not, I have one. You said something, you can exchange data between Unity and Houdini. How do you manage that?
It's
you have on both sides this grid, or
no, you don't need it. It's already in there. In my main network, I can expose parameters. So not in here. Should be. Wrong node. Wait a second. In here. And those are the parameters you saw in Unity. So all of those. And then you have special types of parameters where you have you can either import meshes or HDAs. HDAs are Houdini objects. So basically the city is an HDA. I could use the city and push it back to Houdini and do something with it there. And then I just link them like this. So this is the path I used to generate, or I wanted to use to generate the new piece of railway. And yeah, just the corner points. And this takes it then back to Houdini.
Nice. Cool.
And you can also, when you work building the setup, you have to make your own test data, because you cannot always work with, or you don't want to work with Unity data always because it's slow. But you can also open the scene, the Houdini scene that is running in the background invisibly, and work with all the Unity data to debug it with the real data you're later working with. That's pretty cool as well.
I have another question. I saw that you're using the beta version of the new Unity. Is there a specific reason, or just for trying things out?
No, because it's my private PC in home office. Privately, I'm always on the beta. But there's no feature for which would be necessary for Houdini.
Okay.
So all of this basically is a custom package from Houdini they provide to build this link. It's also available for Unreal. Same thing, same functionality. Works like a charm.
Gottfried, you're muted.
Do you need a Houdini license for the bridge to? Because you need to run both on the same machine.
It's a different license. Up to a certain point, it's included, but the price here, I don't know. Depending on the revenue, it's similar to Houdini, to Unity's pricing model. You need to buy it separately, but then for the people, I don't know, for the level designers, they don't need Houdini. The tech artist needs Houdini and probably the engine to test it. The Unity thing is called engine. You can get it separately only for the level designers.
Okay, cool.
Or the build missions or whatever. And that's the cheaper license. So the engine is cheaper than the editor itself.
Really?
Yeah,
yeah.
So the Houdini program is more expensive than
the
And maybe another caveat you might not know, this is all offline. Nothing of this runs live in a build. It's all meant for pre-processing. Would be too heavy for live.
Okay, cool. Thanks again for the great talk.
Welcome.
Yeah, unfortunately, we realized in the middle of your talk that the recording stopped somewhere. So I restarted it, but it's only half of the talk. I don't know, I will watch it later. Let's see, without the beginning. But yeah, it would be cool to share your slides.
I mean, you can hook me up at the Austrian Slack group, game developers, if you have questions.
Okay. Yeah. That's definitely good to know. Yeah. So now the question is, shall we